Здравейте, уважаеми зрители! Вие сте с предаването конкретно, YouTube каналът е на Поглед.инфо. Аз съм Георги Стамболиев и за мен е особено голямо удоволствие, че днес имаме гост такъв какъвто е Саймън Ципис. За част от вас, които все още не сте гледали негови анализи и негови интервюта, макар че Мартин Карбовски вече направи, мисля, 2 с него, той е световен експерт по международни отношения, киберсигурност и може би най-важното национална сигурност. За мен е голямо удоволствие to say hello and welcome in our studio.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
Well, as a first conversation together, I want to start with summarizing some of the things that I have saw during other interviews that we have given. And my first question will be, are we at the end of one of those 100 years old games, or we are in the beginning or in the middle of one of those games?
We are in the middle of this 21st century new global game, and I spoke before in my previous interviews about the other two games which we experienced in the 19th and the 20th centuries. There are a few things which are in common in all these 100-year games. There are always two sides. One is acting and the other is reacting. This is the main issue, and usually we call it Anglo-Saxon establishment. They act, and all the other countries, they are compelled to react. So who actually initiates this game, and he is acting, and others must react. From the very beginning, they are in a losing position because they are reacting. So who initiates this game, he is capable of managing this game.
So he's in leading position.
Exactly. So during the 19th and the 20th centuries, the main initiator of these global, wide-scale games, geopolitical, religious, and economic games, were the Anglo-Saxons. When I say Anglo-Saxons, many ask, what do I mean? Well, in this word, the answer is in this same very word. Anglo is British, English, Saxon, Saxonia is Germany. So it's some kind of a combination of cultural and traditional. We can say ethnicity, but it's not exactly would be correct, but it's a civilization. Civilization of mostly Western or characterized in most of the times by Western nationalities, core of which definitely the British, and its combination between the British and the Germans. Now, today, this border is very, very blurred because today's game is much more aggressive than the previous ones. And the most important element is it leaves much lesser chances to other players on this chessboard. I will explain it in a minute. To give you a quick historical reminder about the 19th century, the British acted almost solely without any opposition in global geopolitical world affairs. Alfred Milner, Cecil Rhodes, these are some of the most well-known names of imperialists, which aggressively promoted and very actively promoted the British Empire. The differences between 19th and 20th century that towards the end of 19th and the beginning of 20th century, these imperialists had to leave their property, their colonies, and there is one significant element, I call it a pattern of behavior of the Anglo-Saxonic establishment. And it's very interesting. I find it very fascinating. They always manage to leave behind an anti-system for the system they are living. Anyone can ask me or tell me any British colony, and I can prove that after the British left this colony, they maintained an anti-system. They leave a state, they also leave there an anti-state. If they leave a region, they always leave behind them an anti-region. Middle East is the most significant and most vivid example, because the whole of the Middle East was at least considered by the British as colonies of the British Empire. You can name any colony. South Africa, they left when they were leaving South Africa. They managed to live a place with permanent conflictful situation with the blacks, the local ethnical black minority, which was majority, but they actually managed to make it behave like a minority. When they left India, what did they leave behind? Pakistan. When they left China, what did they leave? They leave Taiwan. The same with Korea, the same with Vietnam. All these were colonies of the British Empire. The same with Afghanistan. After they left, first they created the Mujahideen, which later transformed to Al-Qaeda and later transformed to Taliban. Same people, different names. When they left Palestine, which later became the state of Israel, they left an anti-Israel, which is Gaza, and the refugee camp, which is today called Gaza, and then terrorist organization, which is called Hamas. So every time I say that states like Pakistan, states like Taiwan, or entity like Hamas is a project, a British project, immediately I receive feedbacks that I'm a conspirator. I'm a conspiracy theorist. But I can almost easily prove that all these states are actually, in fact, artificially produced, and artificially created. Now, one significant element of these artificially created states is that they don't have a constitution. You can check the current colonies of the British Empire, New Zealand and Australia. They both don't have a constitution. The same coincidence is with Israel, my state, where I live more than 30 years now. Israel has no constitution. From the very beginning, never had a constitution. This makes a major problem for Israel, especially today, because the only thing which is above government, we have a high court, which is now the current government, the right, sometimes right radical government, tries to abolish the high court. So any state, you can pick up any state on the map. If they don't have a constitution, they always have internal domestic problems.
Of course, absolutely logical.
Yes, so this is how you can tell that this country is either under the outside management, or it's artificially created. And the second global geopolitical and geostrategic game began at the beginning of the 20th century, in 1914. I actually put this as a sign of the end of the previous game. 1914 was the beginning of the First World War and the end of imperialism in conventional meaning, imperialism, because the imperialism is still persists, but it's with other elements. It's not with the military power, but with the economic power and soft power.
With a new mask.
Yes, basically it's the same, but with different look. So the second 100-year game, in the middle of this game was the Cold War, which this rivalry was based on ideology. The West against the socialist camp or socialist bloc. The interesting element in this Cold War was that some states actually could afford to be what was called a non-alignment. So they didn't pick neither West nor the socialist bloc. One striking example is Romania, which was considered as a non-aligned state. He actually made the choice. He is not with the Soviets nor with the West. And there were some other countries in the South Africa, South America, and even in some countries of Africa, which actually choose to be non-aligned. Today, in this 21st century game, non-alignment is a luxury. You cannot afford to be non-aligned because nobody will let you. Today you either with the West or with the East. When did this begin, or when did this became clear for me? After a very significant sentence which was said by the George Bush the Jr. after 9/11, when he told this sentence, you either with us or you with the terrorists. So there is no choice, and no state can pick a side. You either with us, with the West, or you the bad guys.
Yeah, if you're not with us, you're against us.
Exactly.
So enemy needs to be very specifically clear.
He didn't leave any choice to nobody. He didn't leave any choice to anyone. He was the president of the United States, and he basically said that you don't have choice anymore. You either with us or with the bad guys.
Was that
because terrorists cannot be good guys, so they are bad.
Was that the beginning of the third game, or there is a other thing that happened?
One of the elements of the this new global game is the war against international or world terrorism after 9/11. However, I think one of the main events, global, significant events of the 20th century was the dissolution, the collapse of the Soviet Union. However, the new game couldn't begin immediately after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The West had to make a cleansing. He had to clean all the former allies of the Soviet Union. He began to invade Iraq. They killed Saddam Hussein, which was an ally of the Soviet Union. They invaded Libya. They tried to invade Syria. There were war in Yugoslavia. They disillusioned the Yugoslavia. They broke up Czechoslovakia. Now it's Czechia and Slovakia. For the next 30 years, after 1991, when the Soviet Union broke up, what they began is the preparation works to eliminate and to destroy not only the Soviet Union, but its allies. Which were small and which were weak.
Okay, just one moment from Bulgarian perspective. Here we didn't have any war, but the disaster that happened in our economy, in our society, is this an example for non-war but still destroying allies of the Soviet Union?
This is your punishment for trying to be non-aligned. Remember, I told you that non-alignment is a luxury. So they will not leave Bulgaria alone before Bulgaria, and sooner or later you will have to make a choice. And they are doing everything in their possibilities to make you align with them. Also, Russia, which is today, it's not correct to call it solely Russia, because Russia is already a part of Euro-Asian bloc, which includes the states of BRICS, Brazil, India, China, South Africa, Iran. And when you speak about Russia, you always have to think of Russia as a part of the Euro-Asia. Because you can easily defeat, probably not militarily, but psychologically, geostrategically, and geopolitically, you can defeat Russia. And in 21st century, the Russian leadership understand that alone they cannot stand this pressure of the global West. So let me go a few steps back.
Okay.
After this cleansing, after this preparation work, the new game began. In my opinion, from my point of view, now they began the offensive, the act against Russia. So Russia now has to react. The West is active, Russia is reactive. So what did I just said? From the very beginning, they are on the losing position. When was, from my point of view, the beginning of this new game? It was in 2014, the Maidan revolution or the coup d'etat in Ukraine. So this was the beginning of action
The whole part.
towards Russia. So they finished with the Soviet Union, they put a V. They finished with most of their allies, they put a V. And now the new game beginning to attack and to try to avoid the creation of the global East, or today some experts call it the global South. And the West, what we know as the West, it's a global North. Actually, you can say that because most of the countries of the Western Hemisphere are mostly northern countries, and most of the countries who are allied together, China, Russia, India, Iran, they are on the south. But if you consider that Australia and New Zealand is even more on the south, so it would be, I call it the global West against the global East. You can also say the global North against the global South. So now the new game, the end game of this new game is, with any efforts and almost in any price, to defeat the global East. And one of the strategies is to activate these anti-systems, anti-states, which were created in the previous game of the 19th century. What do we see today? Today we see the tension between China and Taiwan. This is one region which can spark any day a global war, and between China and Taiwan. What we see? We see tension between India and Pakistan. It's not something new. However, Afghanistan is one of the main players. I'm absolutely confident that they will play an essential role in the creation of the next conflict or regional tension in this triangle: India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. What do we have now? What do we see in the Middle East? We see the war between Israel and Gaza, and the potential war between Israel and Iran. On this background, we see a historical normalization between Israel and the Sunni part of the Islamic world, the monarchies of the Persian Gulf, the Abrahamic Accords. So now they begin to activate their assets, which they left in the 20th century. They begin to activate them in the 21st century. So I think the main focal points of conflictful situation will be the activation of these anti-systems, anti-states, thesis against anti-thesis. They try to, usually they have the pattern of behavior, they take a thesis, they create an anti-thesis, and they try to make a synthesis. This is the pattern, this is one of the patterns of the Anglo-Saxon behavior in their foreign conduct.
Okay, but forgive me, but I'm not understanding why. Why do they need this game? Why do they need a war against East? I mean, why they need to act proactively and to make everything possible to leave traces centuries ago and to activate them in specific moments of the future in order of what? To destroy societies, to destroy countries, to destroy civilization. I mean, right now, you said it, it's a very risky moment. Right now, it's a matter of life and death for the East, as far as I'm understanding.
What I'm gonna say would sound a bit strange for some listeners. And this is not a conspiracy theory, believe me. But actually, the war and conflict is the end game. In past, many scientists, political scientists, experts, when they were analyzing situations, they actually came from the perspective that the war is only an element, or war is a tool or an instrument to get to peace. Do you remember how did they call the First World War? The generals of France, the British, the Russians, the generals were telling their soldiers, we are going to war which will end all wars. This did not happen.
No.
Now, going back a bit, many experts consider war as only a tool, only an instrument and temporary. The problem is that from the Anglo-Saxon point of view, the state of war is not temporary, it's a permanent state.
So the goal is war.
They consider war, conflict, as a permanent state of human nature. So for them, if there is no war, it's a crisis. For other people, if there is no war and there is a peace, it's a benefit.
An evolution.
You must understand how they think. For them, actually, the absence of war is a crisis. The opposite for the other half of the planet. The other people, mostly in the East Eurasia, they consider the absence of war is a good thing. We have peace, we have economic development, we have stability, we can have families, we are sure for tomorrow we can have children. However, for the other part, absence of war is a crisis. They consider war and conflict as a permanent element of human nature. Now, this might sound a bit strange, I understand. This can even bring some people to cognitive dissonance, but when you consider that the war is the end game, and all the elements, instruments, and tools and provocations, they are only methods to get to the end game, to get to the final goal, which is war. I know that this might sound a bit strange, but if you look at this from this perspective, you might understand many things and many events which are going on the geopolitical theater, geopolitical stage. The war is the end game, and now I will sound as a real now what I'm gonna say is as a real conspiracy theorist. There is a writing on the $1 bill, Odoros aut kao, order out of chaos. You can check it in the web. Why would they put such a sentence on a $1 bill? Because they believe that you can realize an order only out of chaos. So for them, in order that the order will prevail, they must create chaos. So all their actions, over and over again, they are actually busy in creating chaos. Now, I know that this sounds as a conspiracy theory, but there is a book I suggest only the title of one of the American scientists is called The Open Conspiracy. So usually conspiracy is a cult, like closed. Everything which happens and you don't have explanation for this, or you don't have any solid proof, you call it a conspiracy theory. But what is going on is actually an open conspiracy. It's in front of our eyes. The creation, the continuous creation of chaos, out of chaos, out of chaos, out of chaos, actually is, the chaos is the end game. There were almost no time in the human history when there was a permanent peace. Always a permanent war. So there must be someone or some kind of a force behind it, which continuously creates conflicts, wars, and suffering.
There must be, or there is?
I would say there is, but for most of our listeners, I suggest you begin with there must be. But I'm sure that there is.
Okay, that was part one. We have 5 minutes, and after this we will go back in the studio. Уважаеми зрители, ще продължим след кратка пауза.